Hi, thanks for watching. This is Jessie, and I am going to be reviewing Fortress in the Eye of Time by Cherryh. And you're going to have to forgive my voice. I am getting over my second round of COVID this year, and it absolutely sucks. So, this is a book that my best friend Carol has been recommending to me for years. And I saw a review from Brian Lee Durfee on this book a couple of weeks ago, and I sent it to Carol, and I said, look, he reviewed your book. At which point she was like, you still haven't read it yet? So I stopped everything I was doing, and I read the book. And I regret not reading it before. And I actually ordered all 5 books in the series. I was that taken by this book. So the book follows Tristan. So Tristan is a shaping that was created by the wizard Moral. And Moral is one of the last wizards alive at this point. So we kind of see how Tristan, who comes to be in, I believe it's like his late teens, early 20s, but he's like a child, so he has to learn things. The thing about the shaping, though, is that Moral had to get the soul from somewhere, and he stole it from death. So this soul that Moral has put into the body of Tristan, nobody is really sure who this is at the beginning. So Tristan, at the beginning, when he's living with Moral in Yeffinel, sorry. So at the beginning, when Tristan is living with Moral in Yeffinel, which is Moral's castle, domain, place, and he's learning like how to survive, essentially. Like Moral has to tell him, don't step out on the ledge when it's pouring, because not only can you get struck by lightning, but you can slip on the water and fall all the way down to your death. And Tristan has really come to love the birds in the attic. So the pigeons, he'll take them bread and he'll talk to them. And in the attic, there's also an owl. And he is wary of Owl. He feels that Owl could possibly be evil. And he knows that Owl goes out at night, and Owl eats the mice. Owl doesn't like it when the pigeons go over to his side of the attic, so you can see like a clear division of where the pigeons are on one side and Owl is on the other. And Moral is constantly telling Tristan to lock the doors. When it gets dark, stay inside the walls, not to let the windows stay open, and to make sure he latches the windows, because the shadows carry evil that is trying to get in. And we're not entirely certain like what the evil is at the beginning, but Moral starts to make it known to Tristan that it's possible that he's going to go away. And Tristan feels that this is something that he's done wrong, because Moral's trying to get him to read this book. Now, Tristan can read, but he can't read what's in the book, and he thinks that the book is bewitched somehow. And so he's trying really hard. He thinks that Moral's going to leave because he can't read the book. And in the end, something does come into their domain, and Moral is gone. Tristan, because the castle is crumbling and it's being attacked by external forces, Tristan goes outside, and he doesn't think that Moral's dead. He thinks that Moral has become one of the faces in the walls, which has a backstory all of its own. But after waiting for Moral for a little while to see if maybe he's wrong or Moral's going to come back, Tristan takes the road that he sees, and he goes through the Marna Wood, which is a really scary experience for him because he's never been outside the walls of his domain. He's never been in the woods. He hears things at night. An owl seems to be following him, the owl from the attic. After a while, he kind of realizes that Owl is leading him. And so Owl is jumping from branch to branch, waiting for him to follow. Eventually, he makes it out, and he comes to Yellowsuin. I can't remember the name of the place right now. Sorry, my brain's still fried from COVID. But he comes to this kingdom where Sefwin is basically stationed by his father, the king. Sefwin is the prince. His father, the king, is in the capital, and his brother, Efanor, is also there with his father, the king. And this place is basically on the borderlands, and Sefwin has been assigned by his father to kind of control the borderlands, who are always in the middle of skirmishes. And Sefwin believes that his father sent him there to fail. He thinks that his brother Efanor is also wanting to see him fail so that perhaps Efanor can eventually get the crown. And Tristan comes and he's taken in by the guards. They're interrogating him. They see that he is really dirty after having been over a week in Marna Woods. And they don't believe that he's come from Yefenel. They don't believe what he's saying, that Moral's dead, or that he even knew Moral. But they do see that he has a book and what they think is wizardry. Eventually, there's a priest in the town whose name is Emuin. Eventually, he gets word of this. He comes and gets Tristan out of the jail that they've put him in. And he promises to take him to Sefwin, which is the ruler. And so eventually they wake up Sefwin wasn't asleep, but he was in bed. But they go and they get Sefwin and bring Tristan into him. And Sefwin is like, this has to be something more than it is for them to get me up at midnight, or it has to be somebody politicking and trying to get me to agree to something because it's in the middle of the night and I just don't want to deal with it. Emuin brings in Tristan and tells him what Tristan has told him. The guards are kind of corroborating it. They take the book away from him. Sefwin's right-hand man and bodyguard, Idris, is completely certain that Tristan has come to trick the prince somehow, trick Sefwin somehow. And he doesn't like him at all. And so his initial reaction is just be done with it, get rid of him, be done with it. Emuin, however, thinks that there's something more going on. And after Sefwin tells the guards and the servants to find Tristan a place to sleep, to put him in a room, and basically watch him, Emuin talks to Sefwin in private and tells him that he thinks that this is the wizard's shaping. At which point Sefwin is like, we don't really believe that the moral in Yefenel is the same moral that they've been talking about being a wizard for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not the same moral. There have been other people taking the place of moral and calling themselves moral, but it's not the same. It's not the same person. But eventually, Emuin kind of convinces him to just at least take it at face value for the moment while he goes and does some research. And he tells Sefwin to gain Tristan's love. And then Emuin goes to Tristan, tells him he's leaving and goes away. And Emuin is gone for a while. So during this time that Emuin is gone, Sefwin and Tristan, Sefwin is wanting to trust Tristan. And at this point, when he looks into Tristan's eyes, he sees complete, unabashed, utter innocence. And he doesn't believe that is possible, because it's like looking into a child's eyes. And he also feels that if he loses Tristan, he'll be losing the only friend that he ever could have had, because he understands that if he is to be king, it is a lonely, lonely life. You don't have friends. Everybody wants something from you. They expect something from you. And so In Tristan, Sethwin has a hope of a friend, but he's already at that point in his life where he's been told and he's experienced so many betrayals, and so he's on this fence. He wants Tristan to be his friend, but he doesn't trust Tristan because he doesn't trust anybody. And so the skirmishes on the border start to come towards this place where they're at, and at one point Tristan, who has no prior training with horses or swords, saves Sethwin's life. And Sethwin at this point is really starting to trust and love Tristan. And he even admits that Emuin told him to gain Tristan's love, but in doing this, he has started to love Tristan. And Tristan to him is closer than even his brother Ephonor, because when Sethwin and Ephonor were children, their grandfather tried to pit them against each other the same way, or their father tried to pit them against each other the same way that their grandfather pitted their father and his brother against each other. And they swore that they would never let their king, their father, their grandfather, they wouldn't do the same thing that they had done. But as they've grown older, they've grown apart. Their personalities have shifted. While Sethwin is at the border because his father doesn't believe in him as a leader, he has come to accept certain ways of life that are they're not okay in the kingdom. The king has banished these practices, and his brother Ephonor has been studying with priests. So wizardry, sorcery, magic, it's taboo, and it's not something that is dealt with in a gentle manner at all. And so they have these two conflicting personalities, but in Tristan, Sethwin has found somebody at this point closer than a brother. Idris, after Tristan saves Sethwin's life, Idris is kind of okay with Tristan to a point, but he still thinks that he is going to be Sethwin's downfall, and he is still recommending that Sethwin just leave him be. And so as we progress into this story, you see how Tristan is starting to remember things from a past that he doesn't remember. He's trying to remember his name. Sethwin is trying to find who this could possibly be. Emuin is trying to find who this could possibly be. Idris is looking in the annals, trying to find who this could possibly be. They all have their theories. And when Emuin comes back with who he thinks Tristan is, it is a terrifying consideration, and it puts into not only Idris's head, but also Emuin's as well, that Tristan is going to flip. Like he's going to switch sides. There's things going on in the countryside that have to do with sorcery, which we learn is different from wizardry. And Emuin, we come to find out, was actually Moral's student at one point. Emuin is a wizard who has turned his back on wizardry and gone into priesthood. But he still believes in some of the old legends, the old stories, which is why he believes that Tristan is the shaping, and he comes to believe that Tristan is a certain person from the Cherryh, which is a people who were destroyed by the Marhannans. The Marhannans are Sethwin, his father the king, his grandfather the king before. The Marhannans destroyed the Cherryhs. Emuin murdered a Cherryh child because Moral told him to, because Moral believed that it was his nemesis, Hasaphan. Now, Hasaphan was another wizard that Moral had taught, but Moral quickly discovered that Hasaphan had no humanity to him. He had no warmth, he had no compassion, he had no fear of consequences, and the things that he did distinctly told moral that Hasaphan was evil. And this is where we come to find that Hasaphan is really the entity that Tristan has been created to stand against. Now, during the time that Emuin was gone, people were whispering that Tristan looked Sihi. And it did end up being something that everybody believed, that Tristan was a Sihi soul come back. And this is, like, in the end, like, there's a huge battle, of course. There's always a huge battle in these types of books. There's a huge battle at the end. And, like, what we find out about Tristan, what we find out about Hasaphan, the things that happen there, it was an incredible story. I've never been really into, like, fantasy that has to do with politics and stuff, and that is kind of the reason why I've kind of steered away from Game of Thrones, because it's not something that interests me at all. Even in my real life, I hate the word politics. I hate it when people are talking about Democrats and Republicans and liberals, and, like, I hate the distrust and the disjointedness and the distaste that comes when people are talking about politics. I hate it. I hate the thought of, you know, the way that people who get into politics, how, even if they go in with, like, honest and pure intentions, I hate how they change. I hate the mudslinging I see in the commercials and the ads from both sides. I hate the lies that I see on both sides. I hate politics with a passion, like the passion that, you know, Republicans have for you know, their Republicanness, and the passion that Democrats have for their Democratedness. Like, I hate it. That is the passion with which I hate politics. And so when I realized that this is going to be, like, a politically slanted book, I was like, oh, what did I get myself into? But this ended up being one of the most incredible, interesting, and unique books I have ever read. I am so grateful that, first of all, Carol recommended it to me, and then also that Brian Lee Durfee did the review on it, because if he hadn't did the review on it, it probably would have been a couple more years before I even picked this up, because I have a lot on my to-read list. But I really enjoyed this book. As far as, like, the Goodreads rating is concerned, I will probably give it a 5 out of 5. And I have, like I said, I've ordered the rest of the series. I have my my ARCs that I need to get through for the rest of the year. There's 6 of them, 4 from NetGalley and 2 from Simon & Schuster. But as soon as I'm done with them, I'll be moving on to the next book in this series. I honestly, until Carol told me about this book, I had never heard of the author. I had never heard of the series. But apparently the author has a huge following. And I actually have other books written by this author. The other books look a little bit more on the science fiction side. And I have to be dragged kicking and screaming to a science fiction book. I don't know why. Just the genre science fiction, when I think about it, I think about, like, spaceships and outer space. And while I am fascinated with the stars, I don't know, like, it just doesn't sound like something that interests me, even though the books that I've read, like that, they end up being, like, really interesting to me. I don't know how to explain it. It's like a war in my mind about science fiction. But her other books look science fiction, and so I'm not really certain I'm going to get to some of her other books, but this series is definitely something I'm going to finish. I highly recommend this. It's so interesting, like the way that the author writes. It's lyrical. It's lyrical. It's the writing, the language itself is unique. And it's so funny because when I was reading this book, I texted Carol. I was like, "How many times have you read this? How many times have you read this?" She goes, "The book or the series?" I go, "Both, I guess." She's read the series dozens of times, and she swears that she's read the first book probably over 100 times. And I believe her, because when I'm reading the book, I see things like the language, and I'm like, that's the way Carol talks. And so, like, there's times where Carol will say things, and when she says them, I'm like, you have such a unique way of phrasing things. And now that I've read this book, I know why, because she has to have read it as many times as she says she's read it, because you don't have you don't talk in a certain way on a normal basis so that it's obvious that this is the way that you always talk, unless you've been in something for so long, like immersed in something for so long. Like, people who learn language, they recommend, if you're going to learn language, immerse yourself in it. Listen to the music, watch TV shows, watch movies, go to the place, like, immerse yourself in the language. And that's how I feel that Carol is with these books. I feel like she has immersed herself in this series and in this world so much that she talks like the characters from this book, and it is so fascinating to me. But I understand why, because, like I said, it was a phenomenal book. It is not what I was expecting at all. I'm not entirely certain what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't, in my head, it wasn't going to be as good as it was. And it was so much better than I possibly could have imagined. So, if you've read this book, I would absolutely love to know what you thought of it. Like, did it impact you as much as it impacted me, as much as it impacted Carol? And I don't think that I love it as much as I do because of Carol. I think I love it as much as I do because it is worthy of that adoration with the book. It was, like I said, the language, the uniqueness of the story. It was all just so captivating. So, if you haven't read it, may I recommend Fortress in the Eye of Time by C.J. Cherryh. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe below.